Your neighbor tells you about the unstable man in the cul-de-sac who claims to have been abducted by aliens. And then there's the woman in town who claims to see Bigfoot all the time. Your boss, who you greatly admire, confides in you that he has started speaking with his wife daily when he gets home from work. She died 8 years ago. It's hard to believe this stuff, and you write these stories off as overactive imaginations. Are these people seeking attention, or are they a bit unstable? No matter what you think, if you're like me, you walk away wondering, what if that was true? The What If It's True podcast features stories by ordinary people like you and me. Something has happened to them, something so strange they are in agony unless they tell others. My name is Cameron Buckner, and the What If It's True podcast is available at whatifitstruepodcast.com and on all available podcast apps.
Welcome to Beast TV. What was that? You better get a fresh dip and buckle up. Welcome to Beast TV. We want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, especially if you're in our live chat, because being in the live chat gives you the advantage to be able to ask our guest any question that you might have. And Larry, we got a couple of great guests tonight, don't we?
No doubt. They always bring a lot of great evidence to the table. And I know they've went over it previous to coming on here with a fine-tooth comb to analyze it, to know what's what, and got comparison videos and all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to hearing the story and hearing about it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I don't see why we should waste any time and go ahead and pull up Shane Carpenter and Randy Harrington. How y'all guys doing tonight?
Good. Doing good.
Y'all approached me about a month ago and talked about this new evidence that y'all found at the 400. And Shane, I'm going to let you explain to the audience of how you found this new evidence.
Could you say that one more time, Mark?
Okay. Shane, tell us about this new evidence that y'all found and how you went about finding it.
Well, this is I've been out there since 2017.
Well, there we go.
Oh, everything works perfectly till we go on the air.
Well, I can go ahead and impromptu a little bit until he gets back on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Shane's been out on this property since 2017, practically setting things up for the success that we've had in the last few years out there. I've been in there for almost 4 years now, so I came in quite a bit after he set things up, but we certainly had the most success. I mean, he's had a lot of success out there, but he didn't have the right equipment. So since I've come in there with the right equipment, this thermal video we actually got pretty early on. but we sat on it for a while because we needed some corroborating evidence, and some of the evidence that told us what we may have on this thermal video showed the same behaviors in encounters that we had after that, like the juvenile that we approached in the field, certain behaviors that I wasn't quite aware of before until I saw it here at the 400. And then we started looking back at this that we got and realized, by golly, we may have something in there that it's showing the same behaviors that we know that we've got a Bigfoot on the thermal video over here, and it's doing the same thing. So that's how we started looking at it deeper. And, fortunately, we're the kind of people who go in after, like the next day, study the area, try to take recreation pictures, put Shane in the same spot and get a thermal of him so that we can compare the two and all of these things. And we were sitting on all of that. But then we started opening it up and layering it and looking at it and putting all the details together. And we think we got one. And it really is an interesting look. And when you think about the behaviors that this thing is exhibiting, it's almost a slam dunk for me. Of course, we can't say that it is a Bigfoot, but I think once you see it and you see the behaviors, I think we're going to convince you otherwise.
Well, that's one thing that Larry and I do, is that we're very careful about what we say is a Bigfoot or not a Bigfoot. But when you're in the field experiencing something and that you've taken the human factor out of the equation, and there's nobody out there but y'all. And then, especially when you get a hit on a thermal, or if you're experiencing characteristics of what we believe a Bigfoot does, such as knocking over trees or throwing things or paralleling you in the woods, then it's what you talk about amongst yourselves, then it's pretty evident of what you have going on in the field.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, until Shane comes on, one of the main reason Shane and I have both gotten into this particular thermal video is about a month or so ago, I was approached by some producers out in Oregon and California area, where they're doing a documentary in Oregon right now. And I was contacted by them because of a friend of mine in Oregon who I had visited before and spent time researching with, a real solid investigator out there, researcher out there who's got a lot of good stuff. And so he had them get a hold of me. And while talking to them, I shared some of my pictures, some of my experiences, and I showed them this thermal video that we had, and they asked if they could use it on their documentary. And the documentary for them, you can actually go onto their website on Facebook. It's called A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed. And they've got a trailer that you can watch. And I believe they're going to tune in and watch this tonight, because they also want to see the corroborating evidence that we have to authenticate this video. But they have this video and they want to put it in their documentary, and I gave them permission to. So that's when I started talking to Shane, and I said, we need to present this on a podcast and let's lay all the evidence out there, because I believe it is one, but that doesn't mean it is one, but just because I believe it. But that's when we started really dissecting the evidence that we had and the comparative behaviors that are reported across the United States that really corroborate that this is what we're saying it is.
Shane, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm good now, I think.
Don't you love technology?
He's moved rooms.
Yes. Our we have satellite internet here in every through T-Mobile, and everything ever since they switched to 5G, our phones, our internet service, everything's went downhill. So I'm good now, though.
You know, one of our research partners, Shelley Reed, I remember last year she said to me that she was going to go back and listen to some of our old audio and review it again because she felt like, you know, she was better equipped, you know, because of her knowledge and experience to go back and reanalyze this audio from 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And this is what you did when you were in Colorado working, is to go back with better equipment and a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more experience. So kind of explain to us how you found this new evidence.
The audio in particular, I'd been working with some new programs and teaching myself some things on a couple programs that I already had, and basically a lot of it was the fact that originally we were going through and looking for spikes within the audio, and then we would listen to the spikes, and what we weren't realizing is that there was a lot of stuff hidden in the main form of the sound waves, and some of these things weren't popping out and visually, when we were looking at these things visually. And so I had a lot of extra time in Colorado, so I decided to really just kick back and listen to every single second of some audios that we had previously been through, and just kind of scan through. So as I did that, I started finding more things that we were missing, and this was one of them. When I heard this, I was just blown away. I can't say what it is, but we have a damn good idea of what it is, and this could be I wouldn't say a breakthrough, but it's definitely interesting. It's definitely interesting.
Shane, why don't you explain to us this area that you and Randy are working? And we've got a little daytime video clip of it to kind of give our audience an idea of what this area looks like.
Sure. So this is the 400. It's what we named it years ago. It's 400 acres. I've been out here since 2017. There's a family group that lives on this property. This area right here that we're looking at is actually probably the most open area in the bottoms of the property. The rest of the property is either upper fields on the upper part of the property, or it's deep woods, thick woods. A lot of hardwood forest. One area of the property's got a lot of cedar, and it's almost like it has three kind of micro forests on the property. You go to the east end of the property, and it's completely different than the rest of the property. So a lot of different stuff there. I got brought into the property because of what was happening. The homeowner, or the property owner, I should say, was not understanding what was going on. And that was it. That was the beginning of this. We pretty much had free reign on this property up until COVID, and that slowed everything down. And I had to go out of town for work for a while. And in amidst all of that, we've been, like Randy was saying, just going back through things and analyzing things a little deeper than we were. This place is definitely special. I don't know what it is about this property particularly that keeps these things coming around, but they're there consistently, and they have been since 2017. So luck brought me into this position, basically. And then I was able to bring Randy into it once I garnered the trust of the property owner, and it's been just golden for us ever since.
I concur.
Me too. From the evidence I've seen from the 400 and so on, it's been awesome, y'all.
I mean,
Seem to
there's
be
things
mellow.
there's things that we're sitting on. We've been sitting on for a while. The things that we can, that we can say for ourselves, we know what that is on the video. We're sitting on some things like that. We have some other thermals and whatnot. The thermal that we're going to look at tonight, it's a long story, and when we get into that, I've got some explaining. Randy's got a little bit of explaining to do, and but this is one of those thermals where we've been back and forth, and it's been a nightmare. At one point we thought we figured out what it was, and then we disproved that in our own minds, and we just got to a point we thought, well, shoot, this isn't something that we have to sit on because we can't say exactly what this is. We have a pretty good idea, but we thought we would just go public with this and share it and let people see it and hear the story behind it,
Right.
and decide for themselves. This is nothing that's going to prove anything and whatnot, but for people who know what's going on in the 400 and have kind of kept up with our story, I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's another arrow in the quiver.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, Randy, I would like for you, because you do have a lot of experience in the field and the things that you have seen over the years, talk to us about how most researchers, and I hate that term researchers, but how most researchers believe Bigfoot interact whenever there are humans around, and the characteristic of their personality as a species.
Well, a rose by any other name still smells sweet. So you can call it researchers or whatever. We all know what we're talking about when we say we're researchers. How you can quantify that with what we do, that's irrelevant. But in 2013, I had a little incident happen at Bennett Springs in Missouri, where on the side of a hill in the pitch darkness of night, I saw just a little speck of a heat signature. I could have glanced over it and completely missed it. But instead, that particular night, I stopped at that little heat signature. It was round, and I just watched it. And I just stood there watching it because it was the only heat signature on the whole hillside on this trail system. And so fortunately for me, I witnessed a behavior that night that turned out to be a Bigfoot that I wasn't completely aware of. That was worth looking for, and that is, it was motionless. It was completely inanimate, not moving, and you wouldn't even think that it was something that you could pay attention to. But in 3 minutes, it slowly dropped until it was completely out of sight. But it took it 3 minutes. That's how slow it was moving. That was the first time that I put into my mental notebook that might be something to look for. And years later at the 400 with Shane, we witnessed it again. And that is with the one in the field that he approached. Its head popped up out of the grass, and that's the position it was in when I first saw it with my thermal. But because of my previous experience at Bennett Springs, I concentrated on it and watched it. And we were standing there talking about it and watching it. And I said to Shane, I was like, it's disappearing, isn't it? I said, that's doing the same thing that the Bennett Springs Bigfoot did. And it indeed, was very slowly dropping into the grass, trying to not let us see movement. And so there it was again, 200 miles in a different location, the same behavior. And that is going to pertain when Shane walked up on that little one in the field. It laid in that field and never moved, even when Shane got several feet away from it. What we learned later, the mother was about 70 feet away, 60 feet away. She didn't do anything either until Shane started to step over to look at the body while it was laying in the grass. That's when she threw a rock and the little one was clacking its teeth. But that's when he finally crossed a line where they did something. But up until that point, the little one never bolted and ran, never got up, never shifted its position. It laid there motionless. That is a huge thing to come to terms with as far as a behavior trait that we need to pay attention to. It was willing to let Shane walk within feet of it because it truly believed, I think it truly believed, that Shane would walk on by. That's the only reason it would remain motionless, because it didn't think it had anything to fear and that Shane would probably walk on by, because they probably had that happen before. So you have to keep that in mind. Motionless is a strategy they use, and it is very effective. And we've witnessed it multiple times on thermal camera. And that is going to come into play in this thermal that we're going to show you, because this thing is actively trying not to move. I mean, it is trying not to move a muscle. It does not want you to see that it's there. But the thing is, it doesn't know that we've got the technology of thermal technology, which allows us to see through darkness. So from his point of view, from the Bigfoot's point of view, his stealth is darkness and non-movement. So he's got everything he needs within those briars to just be motionless and expect us not to see him. He does not know that I can pinpoint him with the thermal camera and then work our way around. From his point of view, he's just going to let us move around and then thinking we'll just go on by him at some point, because that's their experiences so far with motionlessness, especially in the darkness. So when you see this thermal, you're going to see this thing with its back to me, sitting on the ground by a tree in thick briars, and I'm trying to work my way through the briars to get to it, and it is not moving. And I ask you this: do you know of any animal that will not bolt and run as you approach it? A wild animal that will not bolt and run when you approach it. I mean, even human hunters have learned to be still and motionless, even in tree stands. That's their best chance for success, is to not move until they're ready to take a shot or whatever. So it's the same behavior from a different species. And it's amazing to me. Now that we look at this in depth, you can see that it's a strategy they use. We've seen it multiple times, and you are going to watch a thermal video of that strategy being used. When this thing moves, the only time it moves is it turns its head into Shane's flashlight. Shane moves around to the left, shines a flashlight into the thicket. I mean, it's nothing but thick wall of briars, and this thing is in there. I can see it with my thermal. Shane cannot, because he's moving around with a regular camera in the dark, and he's got a flashlight. This thing turns its head when the flashlight hits it through the thicket. Shane films some eye shine, and that's all Shane can see with a regular camera in the darkness, is just the reflection of the light off of its eyes. But I see the whole body, and I see it turn its head slightly. And we got those that action by two separate cameras at the same time. And you can see the heat signature on this thing in the brush. It's the same heat signature throughout the whole body, except for the face. When it turns slightly, the face is much brighter white, which means there's less hair on the face, more skin. But the rest of the body is the same consistency from the top of the head all the way down to the ground. And you'll see the difference when Shane's in there, and you can see he's got clothes on. I'm telling you, every piece of evidence that we've got, that we've investigated this with, tells you what that is. And I can't wait for people to see it.
Well, before we play this clip, is there anything that you would like to add, Shane?
Yeah, yeah. If you want to play that daytime footage that you played in the beginning again,
Okay.
real quick, and I'll just talk about that real quick. This is actually the patch that we discovered this thing in, and this is our trail that we walk out where we've gotten several thermals. On down this is where I had my first approach of the one in the field, but this briar patch that I'm pointing at right now is where we discovered it. And this is the next morning. We actually went back out to see if we could get into that briar patch, figure out where the thing was. I literally cut my way into it so I could try to sit where we thought it was and do a reenactment. And we discovered there's also a tree in there that was covering part of the subject also. So, and you can see how thick that is. I mean, you go 5 foot into that and you can't see nothing. It's just ridiculously thick.
It is.
And I'll say too that after this, we also discovered if you go past this on the left, it is all thicket like that. It gets even thicker and denser in areas, and we discovered these tunnels that are going through these thickets that just barely big enough for me to fit in on my hands and knees, which made this even more interesting after the fact, So, yeah, this thing was in that thicket, and yeah, if you want to go ahead and show it, and we'll just kind of discuss it as we go.
Okay.
Now, I do want to say, before we get into this, I do want to say this, and this will probably actually let's go ahead and watch it. I don't want to affect anybody's thoughts on what they're seeing. So
No, let's put it off a little bit longer. Make them wait.
Well, before we, here's a pertinent question for Randy, and that comes out of our chat room. Tell us about the thermal you was using, what kind it was, and I already know, but I'll let you explain it, Randy.
All right, it's a Pathfind IR. It's a thermal that was made for high-end Cadillacs. Runs off a 12-volt system, and that was the reason I ordered it that way, because it was made for cars, and I could use not a car battery, but an ATV battery to power it while I'm out in the field walking around with it. And I've got a little DVR that was made to go in the dash of vehicles. They use them on buses and things like that. So they've got a DVR that records, and all of this is run through your 12-volt system. And that was appealing to me as far as use, ease of use for myself to be out to walk around with it. So I didn't know it till I got it, how really great it was going to be for us, but it really works great. And you can look up YouTube videos on Pathfinder and look at how well you can see with these cameras, and you'll understand just what a nice camera they are.
Okay, let me get the clip up, and we'll go ahead and play it, and I'll let y'all, I'm going to cut the volume down on it, and I will let y'all guys explain it as we're going through it.
I want to say too, as we go, as we get into it here. Okay, so this is my video. I had just walked around, and here in a moment, you're going to hear Randy say, "Don't move." And just before that, there's going to be some gold eye shine. It's real quick, hard to see. Now I just walked back around to Randy. Randy has the subject kind of honed in. Now, when we watch the actual thermal video itself here in a minute, one of the things you're going to notice is that the shape of this thing changes. And what you have to remember is that Randy's thermal is on the end of a pole, and he's literally pushing the thermal through the thicket, trying to get a good visual on this thing. So there's leaves and all kinds of stuff, between the subject and the camera. And so you'll see the shape of it change, and it's not so much. It's not the individual moving or the subject moving. It's Randy moving, trying to hone in on it and whatnot. And so you're seeing these leaves in the way, and it's this is one of the problems we've had with it. We can't get an exact shape of it, and we've done some other things. I have some other video I wasn't able to get to. I literally just got it a bit ago, and we have inverted it so that the hot is black, and we've actually got more detail that this version doesn't pick up as well. And you see that thing is just sitting there motionless. And there's 4 of us there. Me and Randy are at the thicket, and we have Dan Nedrilo and another guy on the other side of the thicket, probably 20 foot away from it. So we were on both sides of this thing, or both sides of the thicket, and it just hunkered down and stayed as still as possible.
What do you think the estimated distance was from Randy to it?
Man, it's hard to tell. Maybe 10 feet, 8 feet.
That's close.
Yeah, I'd guess 10 to 12.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and we'll play the actual thermal footage.
So on the right side, you're going to be able to see the other 2 guys occasionally. But like right there, there's moments where you can see that there's more of the subject than what even the final, the best shots that we got makes this thing look small. But leading into it, you can see that there's definitely more of the subject there that we weren't catching.
And that was because of the tree. Is that correct?
Yes. We've got kind of a guesstimate compared to me sitting in the same spot on the thermal, and on the inverted version, you can see a little more of the subject at times. And this thing was probably about half of my height. If it was sitting on its butt, it was about half of my height sitting on my butt. And we'll get into that conversation shortly of what we think it was and why it was there. So I'm going to go ahead and say this. Can you pause that video right there?
Okay.
Okay. So when we first was going into around this thicket, when we first caught it, we were sure that we were seeing a head that was peeking at us. As we got around in the moment and we're seeing this thing, we kind of, we already had a good idea of what it possibly was and why it was there. And we'll get into that. But this right here, this moment, my eyes, when we first went back and started reviewing this, me and the other guys and Randy were contemplating on whether or not this was an owl because of that shape right there. As we got into it further, of course, I don't know if you've ever been close to an owl, but it's really hard to get close to an owl. Like you go underneath a tree that an owl is in, if it's on a, fairly low branch, it's going to fly away. We've had it happen several times at camp, but this right here is what made us start thinking and wondering if the whole time we were just videoing an owl. And as you see the shape change before this and after this, you can see the shape changing. But for the most part of the video, Randy found this kind of open spot where he could get this much of the heat signature, and he tried to keep the camera in that spot as best he could. So a lot of it looks like this right here. And it's the other parts of the video that you really have to pause and stop and really look at it. And and you'll start seeing other parts of that above it, or more so below it than above it. But at times you can even see something to the left of the tree at the beginning of the video. But go ahead. I just wanted to put that out there. Originally, reviewing it, we thought this may have been an owl.
Well, I tell you, Angie's better half, BF Bud, post this question, and I'm sure Randy can go into more detail on it, but I know that Randy uses a pole with his thermal, and you could see in the daytime footage how thick the briars were going in there, and it's hard to move when you've got a pole. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that, Randy?
Well, yeah, I mean, as you could only imagine, it's kind of like trying to carry a fishing pole when you're on a bank fishing and you're trying to move to another spot. How often does your fishing pole get tangled up in brush and branches and twigs and leaves and things like that? So imagine doing that in the dark. That's what it's like trying to move that camera when I can't see where the branches. Every time it would catch on something, I didn't know where it was catching. So once I found that spot that allowed me to see most of what I was looking at, I was reluctant to try to go anywhere else because I was afraid I would never get as good a shot as that right there. And so I tried to stay there. And if there would have been any flushing of anything, it would have been Shane doing the flushing. And once he got the eye shine, I'm not sure we wanted to flush anything.
Yeah, we tend not to try to do that. That's what we don't want to do. We don't want to push too hard. Like we're already approaching these things consistently when we catch them on thermal. Anything that we catch on thermal that we think may be one of these, we go into approach mode. So, if it's not what we want it to be, we're going to find out by going towards it and going to it. And either, most animals, as you go towards them, you will flush them out. There's a few animals that sometimes will hunker down and not move, like fawns. A fawn will do that. You can walk up on them at times. But like just that little bit right there that it showed towards the end, you can see that there's more of that individual there. We just weren't able to capture
I'd like to throw this in for the listeners. We eventually left. We just assumed we might have been looking at an owl or something, so we left, went somewhere down the field, thermaling and looking around for things, and we came back within a 10 or 15 minute range and looked over into that field or looked over into those briars, and it was gone. So why would it leave in the 15-minute window that we left rather than when we were pushing into the briars towards it? Why wouldn't that be the reason that it would leave because we were so close to it, as opposed to when we left and it was free to do whatever it wanted to? That's when it decided it didn't want to be there.
How many times have you heard of an enthusiast that spots what they believe is a Bigfoot, and they say, I turned my head just for a blink of an eye, and when I turned back, it was gone? And that's just another characteristic that we see with these creatures. And
yeah,
Randy, you have also captured some thermal footage of an actual owl, and I think this would be a good time for you to talk about this thermal footage that you captured.
Right. Well, the reason I captured this is because I was watching it one night, and you can see its head is constantly moving because that's the way they hunt. They're listening for things. They're looking for things. They're trying to find a wood rat or something like that. And the only heat that you can see from this owl is his eyeballs and his feet. His feet that are holding the branch, and his eyeballs are the hot areas. The feathers, you can barely see at all. They're almost the same color as the night air. Unlike what we were filming in that brush, was hot. It was showing us a heat signature from the top of the head all the way down to the butt that was on the ground. So compared to that owl, not even close. Not even close.
This is some great footage of an owl, and it does show how thick their feathers are, and to where the only thing that you're really seeing is the eyes and the feet.
Now, let me say something about the video quality. This flare footage, if you saw it in real life, is clear. Whenever you're watching it through YouTube, Facebook, or whatever, it deteriorates. So it's not antiquated technology. It's good technology that's been put across the internet, and that's degraded the quality of the picture some. So
we basically show this owl because we know that the thing at time looked like a bird because of the way the tree was up next to it. It shaded it in a way that it looked like it went down to a point at the bottom, but that was the root ball of the tree that was sticking out that made it go to a point at the bottom. So I'm showing this owl to show you the difference in how an owl and the night air look side by side as opposed to this thing in the briars. Clearly two different heat signatures.
definitely.
Absolutely. And we'll go ahead. That's the wrong one. And pull up the actual footage again so that you compare it to the owl footage that we just looked at, and you can see the whole body. I'm just going to find a good spot here and pause it, and you kind of see the tree that's in front of it. But that's
So, and that's another thing. This thing is on the ground, and typically you don't see owls on the ground unless they're going after, a field mouse or a snake or whatever. Typically, if they're on the ground, it's because they're hunting.
Yeah, I mean, it is clearly using the strategy of not moving. And I just don't know what other animal, even a bird, because we have walked up on birds that are sitting on branches because I can see the heat signature. And as soon as you get close, they fly away. Even in the darkness, we've had that happen. This particular thing was more interested in remaining motionless than anything else. That was the main thing it was trying to do.
And now I'll go ahead and go into why this is. Even though we can't say what that is for sure, this is still important to us. Before this happened, me and Randy had been seeing some things that were leading us to believe that possibly, there was a younger, newly, freshly born individual on the property. We'd been discussing this for several months at this point, and this situation took me back to my old area. And this is one of the things Randy knew about this, and a few people from back in the day when I first came out and started showing some of the stuff back in 2013. But about a month into that old area and researching it, after I discovered that group, I walked up on a brush pile, a thicket. It was a big brush pile next to a thicket. And I watched a young individual that was about 2 foot tall back into that. And immediately my thought was, where's Mom? And Mom was nowhere to be found as far as I knew. Kind of made me paranoid seeing this little bitty one, knowing that Mom had to be around. But after that, I'd heard of a few other instances where people had discovered a young one in briar patches or berry patches. regardless, whatever the situation, it was always some kind of real thick patch that had thorns and vines and
Some degree
whatnot
of
going through it.
protection.
Yeah, some protection. We had been having that discussion, and then this happened, and so this kind of pushed our thinking a little further into that side of things. We still can't say for sure, but at this point in July, if there is a new young one, we should get its prints. We should be getting its prints starting in July through October. So we're hoping for that. If we discover new, 5-6 inch tracks with the other individuals this year, then that is going to bring us back to this video and the possibility that this may be
the smallest of the siblings.
The smallest one. Yeah, the smallest one. Alt Clutch, we're not saying this is evidence. We're saying that this is an unknown, and we're discussing the possibilities.
Well, what I'd like to say to a lot of the listeners, many of you have scoured sighting reports and things like that. Imagine how many times you've read where people say, it was on the other side of the creek, and then I heard it heading up towards the hill, and then all of a sudden there was silence. I didn't hear it after that, but I never heard it again. Well, it sounds like it just went motionless. That's another instance where people are reporting that they go motionless, but not seeing it. They're hearing that they're walking, and then they hear nothing. That's because they just go motionless. It's a tactic that works for them, and it's used all the time. Think about how many people find what appears to be hunting blinds that are manufactured close to game trails. The only way these blinds are going to be effective is if these animals sit behind them or inside them motionless. They're not going to be able to snatch a deer by its leg as it's going by unless it's motionless. And it's a strategy and a technique that is reported all the time through these hunting blinds that people find. What they hear is walking in the woods, and then they don't hear it anymore. When they go silent and still and hunkered down and don't move, it's reported. If you peel back the layers of these reports, you can hear that that's exactly what's happening. And this is a thermal that may be showing it happening. That's a tactic.
That's a great point, Randy. We also have another video, and we'll play it. And this is the reenactment that y'all did, Shane. And I think that's very important. If you get pictures or videos, you need to go back at the same time and do a reenactment and check for size comparisons. And so we'll play this and let you tell us about it.
Yeah, so here Randy was not quite in the same spot. We were I had actually cut my way into the thicket the next day and trying to figure out exactly where this thing was. And once I got into it, I found this little open area, this little hole, basically basically big enough for me next to this tree. And it was about the same angle and whatnot. So we just shot it from this point of view. But our main thing is we were trying to see the difference, in size, the difference in the thickness of, trying to figure out where exactly the camera was. There was no way of getting the camera in the exact same spot or putting me in the exact same spot. So we were just trying to get a heat signature of me to compare and to see if it would block out, all of my body, in which there you can see, depending on where he goes, you can only see portions of me. And, like right now, that's my head right there. That's all we're seeing is my head. Now, there. I'm gone except for those little pieces. So this was just to, try to compare and see if we were looking at something bigger than what we could see, which is what we thought in the moment.
Randy, would you like to elaborate?
Well, one of the things that stands out to me is the difference in consistency with Shane having clothes on. You can easily see the different layers of clothing and the fold of the, of where the clothes begin and end and overlap each other and things like that. Now remember, my camera was at the top of the pole. And so I was up high in a looking downward trajectory, or trajectory towards whatever this was. So that's why it looks like you can see the back of its head and its back going down because of my camera angle. Believe me, from about 6 foot down, it was a wall of briars. There's nothing I could do with that. So my camera is in a way on top of my stick, and my stick is 8 foot tall. I could pan it out over and reach over through the thinner briars, and that was my best view to try to capture what was down in there, for over the top, at least in that angle. So it's kind of hard. You get discombobulated a little bit when you're viewing this, and you think you're viewing it from a specific way, not realizing that the camera is 10 foot over my head, given the length of my stick and where the camera was, and kind of looking down at an angle. And unfortunately, that's going to warp your perception of how that was in there. So, that's all I can say about that.
Now, Bama Murdoch has a good question. When you have that thermal on top of your pole and you have your controller in your hand, he asked, do you have zoom capabilities?
No. It's what you call an infinity model. When you watch a video of these things in a vehicle and they're going down the road, they're designed to see much further than your headlights, and it sees a 1-on-1 ratio. There's no magnification. There's no nothing. So anything way in the distance appears pretty tiny, but that's just the way that is set up. And I'm afraid that you really got to spend a lot more money if you want to get one that you can actually zoom with.
Yeah.
Big money. What time of year and what was the temperature that evening?
I believe this was in October, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it could either be July or October.
That's another thing. That's another thing too. Due to the time of year, it was real chilly, and in this area where this property is, it's not unusual to have 90% humidity at times down in these valleys.
Yeah.
Sometimes even we've been down there with 100% humidity, where it's just sticky and gross and hot. But that night it was real chilly. Everything was damp and wet, which everything in the woods kind of takes on the same look when you have the temperature and the humidity, in the right places. So sometimes that temperature and humidity down there will actually hurt us. It actually makes it more difficult to see through some of these areas.
Yeah. Well, I'd also like to say to people, when it comes to other animals, sure, that could be a deer. I'll admit maybe that was a deer. Maybe we are completely confused with what we were looking at and all of our comparisons, and let's just say that's a deer. I have seen so many deer on this property, and not once have I ever had to work that hard to identify it. It's easy to. I've gotten wild hogs. I can easily see wild hogs walking through just walking. They don't stop for anything. They just meander along. I've saw whole herds of deer, and they just kind of meander along and do what they do, with no concern at all with trying to hide in the darkness. Nothing. I've gotten possums with a bunch of babies all over her. I've gotten birds up in the trees. every animal that you can think of. I've gotten mountain lion. I've seen them all with my thermal, and I've never had to look at them for longer than 15 to 20 seconds before they easily identify themselves by just stepping out to where I can see them. This creature is the only one out of all of the animals that I've ever thermaled that actively try not to be seen. And everybody knows that. I don't even have to explain that. This video shows an animal that is not trying to be seen and not moving whatsoever. You know, maybe it's a quail, maybe it's a pheasant, and maybe it's a deer. I can't say. I can just say that what I think it is, and that's given the history of what we're getting on this property already. It's not like I walked out in a field that doesn't have any Bigfoot activity and then I see this and say, hey, that's a Bigfoot. We're in a place where 4 of these creatures live, and they are constantly following us. They are constantly harassing us, especially the juveniles. So that gives it at least a 50% more chance that it is what we think it is rather than the other way around.
You know,
and I'll mention the eye shine too. Somebody had said that, you know, all animals have eye shine. True, but they don't all have gold eye shine. And that was the eye shine that we got that night. And gold is important because the young male juvie, I actually put a flashlight in its face one night. I hit its face with a flashlight, and its eyes shined back gold with a silver speck in the center. And so that was another intriguing thing. When I did get the eye shine in there, it was also gold. So, you know, that was another thing that was making us go, okay, we may have one here.
Randy had mentioned about identifying 4 of the Sasquatch in the area, and Flyby asked the question, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. How many Sasquatch are in that area that you know of?
There's 4 that we positively know are there, and there's what we think is the large male, large female, and 2 juvies. We've pretty well nailed down that the juvies are, the youngest one is a male, the older one is a female. She's not much older because of, and we're just using size comparison, especially in the tracks. I've seen both the juvies. We've had other people have been there and seen the female in particular, the female juvie. We know that they're there. All 4 of them are there due to tracks. We find the mother's tracks with the juvenile's tracks. What we think is the big male, we find his tracks on other parts of the property. We typically don't find his tracks with the other 3. So just if we were just going off of tracks, there's absolutely 4 of them there. And there's a set of tracks that I've found twice out there. And I don't know, I haven't been able to justify saying that it's part of this group, but it's definitely a different set of tracks, and the right foot actually angles outward. I have this subject's tracks going through this muddy area, and I think I quit counting at 50 tracks, and then it went into the water through a creek. But these tracks, every right step pointed outward, as if it had something wrong with its leg or its ankle or its foot. But that was, like I said, I've only found that individual's tracks twice over, since 2017. So I can't say that one's there consistently, but it has been there.
And we suspect, because of certain behaviors that we've witnessed, that we think there might be an even younger one that hasn't reached the age of being set down on the ground and allowed to run free like the 2 older juveniles. We don't have any evidence, but we do have behaviors of the mother that might make us believe she's carrying one. And if that's the case, within the next year or so, Shane will probably start finding some 3 or 4 inch tracks, which will indeed show that all of these speculations that we've had because of her behavior, that she is indeed holding a even younger one.
We're really getting some great questions now. And so if I miss your question, be sure to put it up again and put it up in all caps. But I'd like for y'all to talk about this that John Hall asked. And he asked, if you think it is a very young Bigfoot, how close to it are you willing to get to it to film?
That is if there is one, I'm not trying to get too close to it. Like I'm willing to get up close and personal with the 2 juveniles because we've had so much interaction with them, and they come to us at this point. They come to camp. We know that at least the mother's got to be around somewhere, keeping an eye on things. But as far as that one in particular, I'm not trying to get too close to that one because I don't want to piss mom off. And, that's the thing that people forget is with what we're doing, if we push too hard, we could ruin the whole situation and everything could stop. And so we're riding this line, they always say, don't cross this line. Well, we're walking on that line.
Our toe is on the line constantly. But I would like to add to that question, and it's a good question. Shane and I've had this discussion. What we do is we evaluate what we go through and a better way to do it if it happens again. And so we've gone over this. If this happens again, if we get within 5 or 6 feet of one that's in thick briars and it's trying to stay hidden, we've already decided that with my camera, the way it's set up, I should be able to lay my camera on the ground and slide it along the ground for about 8 to 10 feet and just film upwards all the way into the brush where the creature is and film it looking up from the ground, because that would be the least amount of briars to push through would be on the ground. And so that's going to be a tactic we may use if we ever come across this again, where I will try to slide my pole on the ground all the way into it, looking, and it'll be looking down at it, hopefully.
That's one thing that I like about you, Randy, because I have studied the way that you researched. I kept up with a blog for over 10 years and saw how you did something, and then it sparked an idea for you to tweak it a little bit this way or that way. And that's just something that I appreciate about you, that your strategy is not set in concrete. It is a living strategy.
That's beautiful. I love it, man. Yeah.
Okay.
Half the time when Randy calls me, it's usually, hey, man, I got an idea.
Yeah. And Bama Murdoch asked a question a few minutes ago, and it kind of touches on what you were saying, Randy and Shane both. And he asked, if you could do it all over again, what would you do different?
I would say hunker down, wait it out. See if we could outlast whatever that was. But there again, even when we've approached these things, we don't want to push too hard, and we'll get to a point and then we'll just pull out. We'll leave. We'll turn around, grab our stuff, go back to camp, or continue on going to where we were going or whatever. We want these things to understand that we're not going to do nothing stupid, that we're not going to come right in after them and do something crazy. I believe personally, that's one of the reasons that these things are happening, is because they understand that we're not going to do something crazy. I've been out there long enough and been interacting with these things long enough that I truly believe they understand that.
Yeah. Well,
And if we push too hard, like I said, could ruin everything. So
Ruin everything.
that line is always there, man, and I'm always looking down at it, trying to tiptoe it.
yeah, and Shane's right. Like when he approached the little one in the field, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I was a nervous wreck, and I thought shit was about to go south. He came back out to the trail, and we had a discussion. What do you want to do now? And that question means, are we going to push this any further? Do you want to try something different? And we both decided, well, let's just go back to camp and see what happens. So we actively have a discussion in the moment, just so that we're both on the same page. Have we pushed this too far? Are we going to risk anything by doing something different? And that's something you have to be worried about, because Shane has experienced that before. And so we don't. How do you know when you cross that line? When you cross the line, it's too late. So
Yeah.
So you've got to be timid about crossing that line. So yeah, we have those discussions, and we've also got something in place that I've set my camera up now to leave it by itself when we have another something going on like this, where we can walk away and take ourselves out of the equation, but let the camera stay there and record what's happening. We want to see what they do after we leave.
Yeah, that would be
And
cool.
it will record all night long.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you get one isolated like that, you can stick the pole in the ground or whatever and film and walk away, and whenever it gets up to move, you got it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. That's good. No doubt. Have y'all had any type of retaliation in y'all's camp after y'all have had a close incident like this?
Well, actually, the night that I approached the one, that was the first time. We went back to camp after that, and they followed us back to camp. We hadn't been in camp 5 minutes, and a rock come flying from the ridge and hit the Polaris literally as I was walking by it.
Yeah.
And then we had another rock thrown in right after that. So I wouldn't call that retaliation necessarily. To me, it was just them letting us know that, you just came to us. Well, we followed you back, and we're on you now,
Yeah.
Well, we did
the
have
roles have been reversed.
We did have one instance on audio recorder that could be misinterpreted as a retaliated event, because we don't know for sure which one it was, but the behaviors that we heard in our campsite could very well be the large male. We don't know, because we've never heard such a demonstration of extreme branch breaking as this one instance, where something is going through our camp, and then as it's leaving, it sounds like it breaks a complete tree. And so in our minds, we were like, that has to be the adult male. Why would he come into our camp, mosey around, and walk out and break a branch in a way that it was extremely loud and extremely sharp? And so Shane and I were talking about it. I said, I'll bet you the juveniles were in the outskirts of the camp watching him do his business. And his business is to show the kids who's boss. Yeah, I'm going to check out this campsite. I'm still the one in charge here. But when I saw the large male at the Chickasaw Park, he was very timid about the tent location. So if that's a behavior that could be relied on, I'm going to assume that he was not quite sure that we weren't in the tent or in the camp. And so he was kind of timidly going through camp. But when he realized nobody was in the tent and the camp was empty, that's when he broke this big old tree to show the kids who's in charge there. But he really didn't want to do it, and if he thought somebody would come out of the tent, maybe with a gun or something.
Right.
Randy, I haven't told you either. There's some other stuff on the audio just before that break that we had missed also.
Yeah.
There's some murmuring just before that we've missed.
Right on.
I'll send that to you soon.
Okay. Bigfoot New York Todd asks, do you pretend you don't see them?
We do when we catch it. When we catch a thermal hit, we immediately turn our backs to it and we watch what's happening on a screen. We keep the thermal on it, but we turn our backs to it. Daytime is a different story. If I see one in the day, I try to make eye contact with it, and I want it to know that I know it's there. For the simple reasoning of if I if I make it obvious that I know it's there, and then I don't go towards it, and I don't go try to mess with it, that's, again, we're trying to make these things have some trust in us and know that we're not going to do something crazy. So that's been one of the tactics I've employed since I got into this. I used to do it in my old area. If I would see one, sometimes I would wave at them just to say, hey, I see you. What's up? And then I would move on and go finish doing what I was doing. And it seemed to have worked to an extent. So it depends on the moment and what we're doing.
That makes sense.
The whole turning your back to them when you catch them on thermal, that's Randy brought that into the equation. And the first night we caught one on thermal, it was actually his first night there. Immediately, as soon as he caught it, everybody turn your back. There was 4 of us. Turn your back, turn your back. And when we turned our back, there was a difference in the behavior. The behavior immediately changed. And it was the same deal as Randy described earlier. We first caught it, it froze. Its head was up. We could see it on the thermal. It froze. And we sat there facing it, and it moved super slowly down, 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 down for about a minute and a half until it started to disappear. We turn our backs, it pops its head back up, acting completely different. Then everything's fast. It would pop up, pop down. It'd pop up, look at us, pop down. So the behaviors that Randy has talked about, especially concerning the thermal and how we're, things that we're doing when we catch them on thermal, I believe he is on the money and on the mark on that, just because I've seen it over and over.
Okay, Can Squatch ask, previously, Shane mentioned certain areas of the property having the feeling of a different energy. Have you used any instruments to measure for energy?
It's not just a different feeling of energy that I've mentioned. A biologist gave me a map of the county that particular place is in, that the 400 is in. And this biologist goes out, and his job is to find high energy points. And these high energy points are usually geological things that are causing them. And his job is to find these places. And he has Missouri, Arkansas, several states mapped out. So he sent me a map of that county, and the only high energy spot in that county goes right through the 400. So, so it's not just feeling it. There's positively a higher energy there. I have not measured. When I first got into the 400, I was looking at doing a lot of these things, but once we got to a certain point, all that just kind of went out the window. At this point, me and Randy go out there, and our whole concern is interacting, trying to get these things, hoping that they come to camp at night and we can interact with them. We can approach them. Like, my goal is to sit down right and hand it, be able to hand it a Snickers. That's my goal.
You need to sit
if
down.
If all this stuff slows down, then I'll start looking into some of that other stuff that I was interested. But at this point, it's like that's all that stuff's out the window. All I'm concerned about is sitting in front of these things and trying to have some kind of conversation at some point.
Well, we need to do more where we're sitting on the ground and you're handing me candy bars. I'll eat candy bars and I'll be the guinea pig.
To show, yeah. Oh, I get it. So we can show them what we want them to do. I understand.
And if you ever need a stand-in, I volunteer. I love Snickers.
We got a pinch hitter.
If Randy gets
we'll
sick
be pie
or
for that one.
Okay, we've got a question from Nona Boss, and the reason why I want to put this question up here is because I know from talking to Shane over the years how much he has studied the little footprints that y'all have found. out there and have actually documented year after year of these little ones, these individuals growing. And so, have y'all ever heard sounds or vocals from the little ones?
It's not something I can say positively because I haven't seen them make the sounds that we've heard at times. I've got a whole laundry list of clips, of audio clips, that are just odd sounds that we can't tag to any particular animal. So it's hard to say. We've heard things while interacting with the juveniles, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was them. So I can't say that for sure. I will say that the last time I approached one, I was within 10 foot of it, and it did what sounded like to me samurai chatter, but the samurai chatter isn't like what you typically hear in the recordings that Moorhead put out. These are it's like it was when we listen to this audio, you'll understand what I'm saying. It's like it was trying to say it quietly. It was trying to speak quietly or do the samurai chatter quietly to me. So it wasn't like yelling it. I was within 10 foot. So it was like, it wasn't loud. It was low pitched. It was softer. I peed a little bit, but as far as being able to actually nail down which juvenile made what noise, no, we haven't been able to do that. I'm not positive which juvie it was that was out there with me that night. But it was close to me. Randy put me out where this thing actually was the last time it dropped as I was heading out to it. And Randy led me to the exact spot. And then knowing that I was exactly where it was, that can be an intense feeling when it's around you somewhere. And my vibes were just going off to the left of me. And when I looked over in that direction, I actually I brought my flashlight up and I kicked on my flashlight for a moment. And after my flashlight went out is when it did this samurai chatter thing to me. And that was another one of those moments where we don't know what that means. So Randy was like, that may be time to pull out, maybe time to back out. And I did. But it was unexpected. It was one of the coolest things that have happened to me, but it was completely unexpected and I was caught off guard. If it happens again, because I've experienced it up close, we'll react differently,
We're going to use this question from just half nuts to kind of lead into the audio evidence that y'all have captured. But just half nuts ask, any audio patterns? Do they warn each other when you first show up or when you leave camp? Have y'all noticed anything like that in the audios? Go ahead, Randy.
Only one time when me, Shane, Chris, and Dan were there, they all wanted to run into town, which means they've got to take the Polaris way up the hill, find the vehicles, and then get to town and then come back. And when they did this, I actually didn't go, and I laid in a hammock. I closed myself up in a hammock on the side of that ridge and just waited and was listening with my parabolic, because I told him, I said, I'm going to try to listen to see what happens, when you leave. And sure enough, as they were heading way up the hill and I couldn't hear them anymore, there was a nice tree knock on the ridge that we're camping on now. This is while we were still camping in the bottoms. And so I laid there and I was like, all right, that's cool. They clearly are identifying with the tree knock that people are vacating. And I was laying motionless, wrapped in a hammock. So they shouldn't have thought that I was still there. So that would be them telling the others, I'm assuming, that we're leaving. And then I heard at some point, they come back in about an hour, I think. On the way back, there was another knock, and then shortly after that, I hear the Polaris coming down the road, down the hill back towards camp. And I told Shane about it, but I also got a whistle, one of the whistles that Shane does when he's out there by himself. So there was 2 knocks and a whistle that happened when they thought the camp vacated. So,
It's kind of funny that you say that, but that's something that Larry and I have both experienced with setting out recorders and coming back 3 days later to pick up the recorder, and the recorder's still recording, and you can hear the crunching in the gravel of our tires and us stopping and the doors, shutting, and us starting to move in that direction and capturing the tree knock. It's almost like a warning, like here they come again.
Yeah. When I first started coming out to this property, my vehicle, you have to have 4-wheel drive to get down into the bottoms. My vehicle would only make it part of the way down. So I had a spot that I would park in consistently. And it got to where we would open the doors to get out. And as we stepped out, you would typically hear a knock if I was by myself, 2 knocks if I had somebody with me. And occasionally it wouldn't happen right then and there. But if it didn't happen as we were getting out of the vehicle, within 10 minutes of going down the trail to get into the bottoms, we would hear those knocks.
That's awesome stuff. It's good to hear and to be able to talk to other people that are looking for these creatures and finding, that we're seeing the same thing in different areas. Shane, go ahead and give us a little bit of a background on the audio that we're going to be listening to.
Okay, so this audio was taken it was captured where our new camp is now, actually. We were contemplating moving the camp. At this point in time, the individuals that we were interacting with were, most of the time at that point, seemed like they were coming from across the creek. So we decided to go hang out on top of the hill that's on the other side of the creek. We went up there and hung out, and eventually ended up moving our camp up there. And this was one of the reasons we did that. But Randy, he built these containers that look like a log to put the recorder and mics in. And I believe this was the first time we took it out together in the 400 to test it. And, we were trying to come up with a way that we could hide these recorders, and it would be a little more inconspicuous, no lights that you could see on them or anything. And so Randy, comes up with this great idea. Hey, let's just make them look like a log. So he did that. We went out and sat on this hill and it's nothing but trees, right? So we go sit up there. We were there maybe an hour or so. Randy set the log up, got it recording. We left, and about 25 minutes after we left, you start hearing things landing like they're being thrown around the recorder, right? So immediately I'm just like, there it is right there. Immediately I was like, how is this happening? They would almost have to see us put these things down in the dark, mind you, to know it was there. You would assume. So eventually you hear something start to slowly approach in towards the log there, and you hear some more things land around it, and then you hear sounds like something comes up close to it, and then at one point you hear a grunt and what sounds like a possible rock clack. Then you hear a thump and the recorder gets moved. Okay. And I think I sent you that audio. That recorder gets moved. It gets slid over, is what it sounds like. And then this audio clip happens. After this audio clip, you hear the recorder moving around inside the PVC that's inside that bark is wrapped around, which tells us that it got picked up. And then at that point, you hear footsteps. And then you hear the thing basically being set down. And the next day when we went back to get the recorder, it was 20 yards, 25 yards from where we had put it. But all that stuff in that audio is nothing new. Like, we have lots of that stuff, but what we're going to listen to is what I had missed early on. And when I heard this for the first time, it sent chills down my spine. We exhausted every possibility of what it could be. So we just thought, once again, we'll just let people hear it and let them, figure out what they think it is. I can tell you that it is not me. It is not Randy. We were the only two there at this time. Only two other people on the property, and they were nowhere near this area. I mean, they live on the other side of the property at the front of it. So it's very unlikely that this is a person. It's very unlikely. And a person wouldn't have been able to even know that this log was something out of the ordinary,
And so when Shane says Randy set up the recorder, there's no setting up to this recorder. It's basically having a log sitting on my lap, and I set it on the ground, and then we'd fold up our chairs and leave. So there was no setup for anything to watch us set it up. It was already set up, and you just set it on the ground, and it's a log. So the fact that something went right up to that thing means that we were being observed, and that's why we started putting our camp there.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna play this recording, and I'll probably let it play twice.
Okay, this first one is the original clip. Okay, so that was just before when it got moved, and you hear it slide. You hear it get pushed or slid somewhat there. And these are just, some of the little things that were happening ahead of time before the main thing that we're going to listen to.
Okay, let's play the main clip. And this is the original clip that has not been filtered. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's definitely a voice, some type of voice.
It almost sounds like it says "hold that," but I don't know.
And I don't know the difference between what a juvenile would sound like, or a mama, or a dad. But I'm just going to assume it was the dad, and he's not happy with me.
Yeah.
I've been studying this and looking. There's another phrase that we've caught out there on video and audio. It was yelled once at us, and it was "ahoo." And to me, this sounds like it's saying "det," like OHMDET, det. I could be wrong. And this is one of the reasons we're playing it. We wanted other people to hear this because, maybe somebody out there that's heard something like this before that can fill us in and give us a little info on what they may think.
Okay, let's play the speech that you filtered and cleaned up a little bit.
Okay.
and death. All and death. All and death.
Wow. I'm just going to let y'all guys talk about that. I mean, kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. We can't say what that is because we didn't see it happen. But we can tell you that we've had these things coming up to our recorders and tapping on our recorders, moving them, breaks. We've got all kinds of stuff on recording. And this is the most unique one that we've captured so far.
Yeah. That's a great capture.
I don't even know what to say. I mean, I'm to a point where it's just mind-boggling. There's only two things that it can be in my mind: a Sasquatch or a person. And I can tell you there's no way a person found that log sitting there. No way. Absolutely no way. It was just me and Randy on the property. That's it.
Yeah. And when as far as researchers out there listening to us or things like that, there's so much hit and miss in everything that we do. It's basically hit and miss. Throw a handful of mud and see what sticks. And that's the way it is all the time. But we do understand that there's a certain range that they're comfortable in when they're up on a ridge watching us. First of all, they've got to be close enough to be able to see us. So they can't be a mile up the ridge. They got to be just far enough where they can still see, because that's what they like to see. But we're trying to find where we think that range is. And one of the ways is moving the recorders farther and farther away from us till one of these days we're going to find that sweet spot. And that sweet spot is where they're hanging out while they're watching our campsite. That's when we're going to hear them talking with each other. When we figure out where that sweet spot is up on that ridge on the other side of the creek, that range that they hang out in while they're watching us, because they're going to be communicating with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm getting texts and messages. Everybody wants to hear it again. So
play you can go ahead if you want and play the one that's completely cleaned up, that is just the voice itself.
Okay.
Because that's also amplified. I think people will be able to hear it better. It's the
All and death. All and death. All and death.
Wow.
no idea.
Hey, Can Squatch asked, was the recorder inside wood or plastic? Well, here's the way it is. If you look back at the pictures of the log that I have, it's a parabolic that hangs out one end of the log. So there is nothing that's being recorded that is inside the PVC tube. So it's not like something would be talking into the cup or anything like that. The parabolic mic sticks out the end of the log. The recorder is inside the log, but it's plugged into the parabolic. So the parabolic is only recording what's outside of the log.
And Mark, if you want to go ahead and play the other one that is, it's got the big fat wave signal on it.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull it
And
up.
that one's also boosted. I think they'll be able to hear what's happening a little better.
All and death. All and death. death, all death, all death.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great capture.
It'd be great to hear
Mark
it.
Ledford
4
said
o'clock in the morning.
pig Latin.
I know I have missed some questions.
Well, Mark Roberts asked a question, he specifically talking about the Crawler Hill where Shane marked the rocks and placed them up there, and then we had the rocks thrown the next night or that night. Mark Roberts was asking, have we ever put a recorder up there? And the answer is no. But we do have some plans for that area. Shane and I have been talking about it, and I'm very excited about trying. It's going to take a couple of nights, but I think it could yield some very good results if it follows the plan that I think can work there.
And speaking of plans, future plans of doing, Shane, do you want to talk a little bit about incorporating me and Larry into this strategy?
I knew I'd get to eat some Snickers bars.
I'm bringing pie for this one, Larry.
All right. Y'all can set me in the middle of the field or whatever you want, and I'll sit there and eat away.
We'll call Larry the bait station.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, and Larry has been known to bring homemade fried pies into an area.
Well, it'll be the first time in the history of Bigfoot research where a Bigfoot and a man are fighting over a candy bar, and the Bigfoot goes away with some of Larry's hair.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm seeing a lot of comments that people are hearing "I'm death" or "I'm death." That's what Randy had mentioned also, that he was hearing the word death, and I've let a few other people listen to it privately, and other people are hearing that too. But me personally, like, you know, I'm able to sit here and like really crank it up and listen to it, and I'm not hearing the TH. I'm hearing it just a T at the end. Or maybe I'm just not wanting to hear the word death. You know, that could be it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear you can hear in the frequency pattern of that voice that there's definitely a big set of lungs. And as you hear most of the frequency patterns on the lower end of the scale, there's not a lot of mid in it. It's mostly you know, some high tones, a few high tones, and everything else is like low mids and down. If you look at it as far as, you know, the frequencies that are hitting and whatnot.
And here is an interesting observation from our friend Christine. It's calm, very even cadence, not a lot of emotion in it. That's a great observation, CD.
Yeah. And like I said, once again, it wasn't being projected loudly. It's almost like it was sitting next to the recorder and just kind of said that under its breath almost.
Yeah.
Like you have to, I know people haven't got to listen to everything that transpired leading up to that on the audio, but in my mind, as I'm hearing all the things happening, when this happens, in my mind, it's sitting fairly close to the recorder, because after that things start getting moved, which tells me it had to have been fairly close, which means also in my mind that it was almost murmuring this under its breath somewhat.
Well, I think that maybe
But I could
a little one had asked Dad, when are we going to go down and get some iced coffees? And the dad probably said, in a little bit. I don't know what Bigfoot language says.
Wouldn't it be great to know?
Now, Hilton asked, have you guys tried slowing it down? Or even
no, I haven't. I haven't, just because of the fact that when you listen to it, it sounds like the words are being drug out somewhat. You know, it's not like it's saying I'm dead. You know, it's like, oh, I'm dead. You know, it's real like she was saying, the cadence is real mellow and there's no excitement in it whatsoever. I saw somebody else ask if we had tried playing it backwards.
Uh-huh.
No, I haven't.
Hell, he could have been
But I
eating some
have Iron
pawpaw.
Maiden.
He could have been eating some pawpaw seeds or something. Because you know how when we're eating, sometimes if you get so into it, you're like, good peach.
Yeah.
So he could have just been eating on something and be like, good pawpaw seeds.
You bringing up
Right.
pawpaw seeds, and I saw earlier in the show where Can Squatch talked about finding the pawpaw seeds in this area that were out of season. So it enables us to do a little bit of speculation. So Shane, why don't you talk to us about the pawpaw seeds out of season and you finding them?
Yeah, so when that happened, it was literally, this was right after I brought all the guys in for the very first time. I was real anal on doing things exactly the same way every time I was out there, so I was predictable. And since I'd brought these strangers in and done this completely off the wall thing compared to what I normally did, I decided to go ahead and change up a couple other pattern hikes that I was doing. And the following week, I come back out and there's a pile of scat on this new hike that I'd created. And the scat had pawpaw seeds in it. At the time, I filmed it. I have all this on film. I thought possibly it was bear scat because of how it looked, the consistency of the scat and whatnot. And then the next time I found it was a couple weeks later. And so this is starting in July. I found 2 more piles, and then the fourth pile that I found was at our bait station, and it was on a rock that is like 8 inches thick. So something crapped on the rock out of all the places that could have crapped up there. And this was like 5 foot from where the actual bait is. And then a pile was left in front of my vehicle. And then another pile was left another time behind my vehicle. And this happened all the way up and through to December. Pawpaws, if you know anything about pawpaws, if they have not dropped before the first frost, they will super ripen and within 3 days and drop. So typically the beginning of October, the pawpaws are dropped. They've dropped and they're gone. So we were finding these seeds whole, mind you. If a bear was digging up seeds and eating them, you would assume that they would chew them up because they're not going to get any nutritional value out of these seeds unless they chew them up. If they're pooping them whole, they're getting nothing from them. And animals tend to understand that naturally, right? So I started, I also noticed that after that first pile that the scat was different. The first pile also had, you could tell it had a lot of berries in it. And from that time forward, the scat changed and turned into, didn't look like bear scat. A couple of the piles were turds, So December, there should absolutely be no whole pawpaw seeds in scat. I don't care what anybody says. It's just not going to happen. A bear is not going to dig up pawpaw seeds and swallow them whole. And mind you, there's no bear on this property. We have never, since 2017, there has been no bear on the property that anybody has seen or found tracks from. So very unlikely. And which that's another thing that seems to be commonplace is that bear don't hang out where these things hang out. So. But that leaves us one option, the possibility that these things are somehow storing food. And, when I showed Dan Nedrolo all the video and the pictures of this scat, that's the only conclusion that he could, fathom was that these things are somehow storing food. There's just no way to get pawpaw seeds in your belly in December.
Yeah, that's that's what I was talking about, the speculation, because we have talked about that previously on and off the air, and I that's a behavioral characteristic that we should put in our box, that when we see it again, and it should be something that we're looking for.
Yep, absolutely. And we didn't even know there were pawpaws on the property until this point. We had no idea. Turns out the pawpaw trees were about 800 to 1,000 yards from camp on the other side of the creek. So we set up some things to we were trying to get some hair samples, near around and through this pawpaw patch. Me and Randy went out and set some things up with the hopes of getting some hair samples that we never did. Nothing really worked.
Well,
we don't use cameras.
We might as well tell the people, because it's something they can use in their own research, and it should be effective. We just didn't do it anymore because it is a lot of work, and it's a flood area. So when it floods, that's what destroyed the hair traps that we put up. I bought some of the 4-foot carpet tack strips, painted them black, and then we put them on the sides. We screwed them to the sides of a tree area where we thought maybe they were coming in to watch across the creek, in the hopes that it would snag some of their hairs. But carpet tack, painted black, put it in the shadowy side of a tree, and you could catch hairs all day long, I would think.
That's a great tip, Randy. That's awesome.
This we contemplated at one point putting a trail cam down there, but this is also a food source, and once again, there's that line that we're tightrope walking, so we don't use game cams very often out there. We've tried them in a couple places, but that's just not part of our strategy out there. So we'll do it in other places, just not at the 400.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Guys, we are just about out of time. But Randy, I would like for you to leave us with any final thoughts. You can elaborate into tactics and strategies that you're working on for when y'all go back into the 400.
Well, we touched on them a little bit here. One of the big ones that I think is going to make a huge difference in what we can get out there is the ability to walk away from my camera and have it effectively watch what these things are doing after we take ourselves out of the equation. Almost every encounter and every encounter involves somebody who's witnessing it, or it wouldn't be an encounter that's been reported. So every encounter, every picture that is taken, almost everything involves a Bigfoot and the person that's watching them. And the Bigfoot seems to always be responding to the person watching them by trying to hide, constantly hiding. So that means they're hiding from the person holding the camera. And how do we get away from that? So one of the big changes that we're going to be employing this year is I've set my walking stick up with tripod legs and a GoPro so I can film in 4K along with the thermal in the same position. And if we ever come across something that we decide we're going to let the camera work for us, we're going to open up the tripod, line the camera up, drop my vest that's got all the batteries and the DVR, hit recording with the thermal, and we're going to leave. Whatever they do after we leave will be the first time in the history of Bigfooting that you capture them behavior that doesn't involve them trying to hide from us.
That's a great strategy.
Definitely.
And I want to reiterate, Randy's thermal will record all night long, which is a huge bonus. I mean,
Yeah.
Randy's left that thing. He's left that thing in a creek bed, looking down the creek bed all night long. It's a lot of footage to go over, but
well, that's what you're out there for.
right.
Shane, would you like to leave us with any final thoughts?
Not really. If nothing in particular, we just wanted to come on tonight and let people look at this and look at the FLIR footage and hear this audio. And if anybody, has any good ideas that are possibilities that I haven't mentioned as far as the audio, especially, hit me up and tell me what you think. I'm open ears. Like I said, we don't know exactly what it's saying. We don't know exactly what is in the thermal. So, feel free to hit me or Randy up and let us know. Our hopes is that somebody would see some of this and go, "Oh my gosh, I've seen that, or I've got the same exact thing, or I've heard that exact same thing."
Well, also, I'd like to add in there to anybody that's out there. I think Shane and I really gel. I've never been out with somebody who doesn't try to change me to make me research the way they research. And I don't change Shane, and he doesn't change me. He just lets me be me. I let him be him, and we work well together. Too many times you see people of the same feather and cut from the same cloth. They only want to research with people that research like them or do like them. And sometimes that's not a match made in heaven, because nobody wants to try anything different. It just really works with me and Shane. And I try to say this every time that we're on a show together, how much I appreciate what he's done and the fact that he brought me in. It's really been a wonderful experience for me. And I want to do everything that I can to be reciprocal on that.
And it goes both ways. I feel the same way about Randy. It's, we got a bromance going on. No, I know you two got the same thing going. I understand.
It's a bromance that produces, so keep going.
Right. No, that's that's Randy. We come at things from different angles, but we always end up meeting in the middle. And everything that we want to do separately always somehow ends up working together. And we've got a lot of things that we're going to try this year and that we're going to employ. And a lot of it's simple stuff. Randy bought one of those tents that go up in the trees. And where our camp is, we're up on a hill. We're actually camped at the top of the hill. So we're going to be able to put that tent up even higher, which is going to give us more of an advantage when these things come in around camp, because we're going to have a view from up higher. And so that's going to be an advantage. And literally we can just, we can, anywhere there's trees, we can throw that thing up and have a height advantage as far as our view. So a lot of simple things like that we're going to be trying. But, when it comes down to it, my hope is that by the end of October, we'll have footage of me and Randy within 5 feet of at least one of these things. And that's next on my list. I'm sure I've told you guys before, but every time I go out and approach these things, I have a night vision camera in my hand, and that's so they are used to seeing it, but I've never turned it on. At some point, that's going to have to happen, right? I'm going to have to turn this camera on, and we don't know how or if they're going to react to the IR light.
Yeah.
There's the whole thought that they can see the IR light. So when I turn this camera on, things could change real quick, but I'm hoping that's going to happen by the end of October this year. And along with other things, Randy's got some ideas that we're going to employ on Crawler Hill, which has been a kind of a crazy place that we don't go a lot, but every time we go up there, we have some crazy things happen. And that tends to be where the big male, where I find his tracks a lot. So, and the Juvies come up there too. We found their tracks up there, and they've came in above us. And so, yeah, it's going to be some of the same this year, and a lot of new things, actually. Randy's got me talked into, but Randy's opened me up to try some different things, that up until Randy got involved, I was very specific on doing things the same consistently all the time. But I think I was at a point when Randy got involved that these things already understood that I wasn't going to do anything drastic or anything stupid. I think they were already under that impression. And then once Randy came in, he kind of opened me up to these different ideas and things. And he's full of them, of course, you guys know. So, yeah, we're gonna start implementing some of these other things this year, along with what we're already doing. So hopefully we'll get some good stuff, and when we do, we'll come right back here to Sawdust Beast and let people check it out.
Well,
as we release things, we've got some other stuff we're probably going to release before too long, but just getting all the data we can out of it before we go that far,
Well, we appreciate it. Larry,
Definitely.
do you have any final words?
Just keep on doing what you are doing, presenting the evidence. I love most people put out the video or the pictures and they don't give the full story. You always give the full story with whatever happened, audio, video, pictures, whatever. And that goes a long way because people are quick to dismiss anything. But whenever you got the whole story, you got the comparison shots and all that, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we want to appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. And I saw where Iron Dogger thanked y'all for sharing everything, and I'm sure other people were. And if you've got any questions, if you watch this after the live broadcast, put them in the comments section. And Randy and Shane will be more than happy to answer your questions. And I just want to personally thank you, Shane and Randy, for reaching out to us and letting us do the premiere of this new evidence found. It's very much appreciative. And we have a lot of respect for y'all and what y'all do. And we can't wait to share a campfire with y'all.
Yep.
Soon.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, we will see everybody again. Same bat time, but on Larry's Bat Channel. Night, footers.
Good night.
Beast TV would like to welcome all of our new Facebook members. Be sure to check out our pictures and videos of possible evidence. And if you haven't checked out the Files tab, there is a wealth of information that you may find beneficial. If you would like to support Beast TV, check out our gear. We have coffee mugs, face masks, gaiters, shirts, and tank tops. The link is pinned at the top of the comment section. Everything is always marked down 20%. So come check out our junk.
This has been a Sawdust production.